Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched The Boys season 4. Let's talk about it. So today we are going to be diving into my thoughts on The Boys season 4. If that sounds fun to you guys, then stay tuned. But more than that, I really wanted to dive into a bigger and broader discussion about media literacy. About media literacy. And I think this is the perfect time, as we are talking about The Boys today, to really go through my thoughts on this topic, because I know that it's been a really hot topic for a couple of years now, but I think this season of The Boys demonstrated pretty much exactly what people were talking about when they said that media literacy seemed to be dying, seemed to literally be dying, being thrown out of the window. It seems to be a dying art form, and so we are going to discuss this in today's video. If that sounds fun and engaging to you guys, then stay tuned. And of course, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now, without further ado, guys, let's get into this. So we're going to start off with the discussion. We're going to start off with the topic of media literacy, because that's the real angle that I'm taking with my review of The Boys. As much as I enjoy talking about The Boys, and I have reviews of previous seasons on my channel if you want to check those out, today I really want to dive into this specific topic because, as I said, it's mostly relevant to season 4. So for those of you guys who have been watching The Boys and have been on social media, you probably already know this, but early on, when the first few episodes of this season dropped, it started to become very clear to certain members of the Boys audience that perhaps their faves, okay, perhaps their ideologies, perhaps the people who they consider to be the heroes were actually the villains. Like, were actually being villainized on the show. Perhaps the things and the ideas that they believed in weren't being seen in a good light on the show. Perhaps they were even being condemned. Perhaps they were even being criticized. Like maybe, perhaps they were actually the bad guys all along. Some members of the audience started to realize this, started to clock on, and all I can say to that is, like, how did it take you so long? How did it take you so long to realize that The Boys is a critique of this right-wing agenda? Like, what? It is honestly baffling to me, because to me it's been clear since the very beginning. That wasn't even the interesting part about the show. I mean, there are many things that are very interesting about the show, which we'll talk about, but it just boggles my mind that there were members of the audience who genuinely did not realize that Homelander wasn't the hero. It's truly mind-boggling to me. It's genuinely mind-blowing mind-blowing to me that there were members, okay, of this audience who saw themselves reflected on this show and really thought that they were presented as the heroes. They really thought that this show was praising them, that it was representing them, that it was giving a voice to their alt-right cause. What? We were watching two different shows then, because buddy, you've always been the bad guy. Like, it's always been villainized. Homelander was always the bad guy. It takes an immense amount of selective hearing, viewing, experiencing to not realize that this show has always been in condemnation of the alt-right movement. Like, And that's where the media literacy kicks in, because to me, it was always clear that Homelander was the bad guy. This entire series is based off of the premise that superheroes are real and they have this elite position in society, especially those that are under the Seven, their version of the Justice League, who are supposed to represent all things right and good. But in reality, underneath the surface, although not even that far down underneath the surface, they're the bad guys. They're chauvinistic, they're arrogant, they're bullies. A lot of them are even criminals. They have no morals, they're selfish, they're narcissistic. And that's the whole point of the series, to show this dichotomy between the image of heroes that Vought likes to show to the world versus the reality, what they're really like. I mean, in the first few moments of the series, you see A-Train plow through Hughie's girlfriend And then a lot of the first season is about how Vought and the Seven tried to cover this up, about how they tried to protect themselves because they're a very specific brand that they need to sell to people in all of these different avenues and verticals that the company has, and so they can't afford for this image to be tainted. Like, that's literally the point of the first few seasons of this show. So the idea that some viewers would not realize, would not clock on that the good guys were never the superheroes, that actually everything that Homelander stands for is being villainized on the show and critiqued, is genuinely baffling to me. You need to have been watching this show with your ears and eyes covered to not see that. Like, and now that it has become clear to these members of the audience, they decided to boycott the show. They have started to review bomb the series. They say that it's too woke. They say that it's pushing an agenda, blah, blah, blah. And like, yes, it is pushing an agenda. It is, in fact, woke. Yeah, that's true. And by the way, speaking of woke, I will never forgive the right-wing mafia for appropriating that African-American vernacular English in such a disgusting, despicable way, twisting its meaning to become some sort of insult. In reality, being woke is a good thing for certain people in society who can't afford to be caught sleeping at the wheel. But that's just an aside. These people have now condemned the show in its entirety because they finally clocked on that they are the group that the series was making fun of. To which I say, fine. To which I say, don't let the door hit you on the way. Because like the fact that you weren't able to clock onto this in the other 3 seasons of the show that we got so far, where this message was made clear from pretty much day one, says more about you than it does about the show. Because we've been new that that's what the show was trying to do. Duh. Were you just watching the violence and the brutality and the blood and the milk drinking? You weren't paying attention to the context. You weren't reading between the lines. And there it is. Therein lies the issue. The lack of media literacy. And really, The Boys is far from the first show or movie or franchise to suffer from this phenomenon of a whole group of audience members finally clocking on that perhaps their ideologies don't actually meld with the messaging of what they're watching, and perhaps because they were watching with blinders on, or because they weren't actually critically thinking about the material and just watching the shiny, flashing lights in front of their eyes. Whatever the reason maybe, we've seen this kind of thing happen time and time again, especially in recent years with the rise of populism and alt-right movements. We've seen this reflected in electoral politics and the socio-political spectrum in society right now. But of course, it has also impacted media and how it's consumed, how it's commented on, where any media that even dares to suggest any, racial representation of the LGBTQ community, or people with disabilities, people who aren't a size 0, any representation of people who do not fit the social norms of a heteronormative white majority society gets review bombed, gets critiqued as hell, gets dragged through the coals. And like I said, we've seen it time and time again with TV shows, with films, and of course with franchises like Star Wars, which according to these folks has become so woke. Star Wars was never woke, but Kathleen Kennedy was the one to put politics in my Star Wars. How dare she? As if Star Wars, as if the Empire was never a metaphor for literal Nazis. As if the Empire literally did not represent the same thing back in the 70s when it was made, as if that metaphor already didn't exist. But these people swear up and down that the politicization of Star Wars has only just happened under Disney and Kathleen Kennedy. They don't see that Star Wars was always political. It always had those undertones. They don't see that the Empire is literally a metaphor for Nazism, for the alt-right. They don't see that at all. And so now it's just the new new stuff that has all of that wokeism in there, and it drives them insane. So yeah, we've seen this kind of thing happen time and time again in recent years, especially because social media and social media political movements have driven people even more apart than ever before. And with this polarization, you have, say, half of the audience that want to see more progressiveness, more representation. They want to see Hollywood continue going down this route. And then the other half want to see Hollywood go back to the good old days where you only had stars with blonde hair and blue eyes gracing the silver screen. Now, I have to say, the most annoying part of this phenomenon, of this movement of right-wing folks bashing anything that goes against their ideologies, anything that has representation or any progressive messaging, they go out and they review bomb these things, they torture the actors involved, you know, abusing them online and sending death threats and the like. And that is all terrible. That is all horrendous. But then on top of that, another frustrating part about all of this is that you can't even get proper critique of the show anymore. All of this commotion and all of this hubbub pretty much kills any proper critique of a series. It kills the ability to conduct actual media literacy, because all you have is this loud noise of dissent against any representation, any progressive thought. And it's so tough to wade through all those weeds to get to the true substance of the project, to really give it some critical analysis. And I mentioned this earlier in the year with my Madam Web review, where I talked about how frustrating it was to see so many people review bomb the Marvels and act like it was the worst film ever made. It was so awful, it was garbage, it was trash, it had no redeeming qualities, blah 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 blah, all coming from places of racism, discrimination, sexism, all sorts of horrible isms that film faced. But when you have a Madam Web come along, that's actually an awful film. That's actually one of the worst films, certainly one of the worst superhero movies made in the 21st century. All of a sudden you look ridiculous, you look insane, because you're giving the Marvels the same sort of critical reception as Madam Web, and something isn't lining up. And it's because you have all of this hatred and discrimination muddying the waters and making it impossible for us to see clearly what was good and what was bad about the project. And a more recent example of this is, of course, The Acolyte, which has been disgustingly review bombed. It was review bombed before any of the episodes even dropped. Actually, it was deemed a disaster, it was deemed a failure, a flop, before a single episode dropped. Now, I haven't watched The Acolyte. I'm tired of Star Wars. I'm tired of Star Wars. I was into it for a hot minute there, you know. I was like, oh, I finally understand this franchise. And now I've dipped back out because I'm sick and tired of it. I need a break from the franchise itself, but certainly, of course, from its fan base, please. So yeah, I kind of took a break from Star Wars. Haven't watched The Acolyte, but I have, of course, seen the horrible reviews that it has gotten. And even if the series isn't the best thing in the world, it's so tough to determine what's wrong with it, because all I see is 1-star reviews based off nothing at all, based off nothing but racism, sexism, and just hate. And that's what I mean when I say it's becoming impossible to do any proper critical analysis of this kind of media. And that goes for both sides, by the way. I mean, of course, on one side, you have the people who are leaving 1-star reviews and they're review bombing and they just want to express their anger and hatred, so they're not interested in critical analysis anyways. But then on the flip side, you have people who are, you know, progressive, who are happy to see the representation, are excited by this direction that some of Hollywood is taking. But then they also want to watch the project and actually critically analyze it and talk about what's good, talk about what's bad, what could have been improved, and kind of take it in a bit more of a nuanced way. But there might be a reluctance or hesitancy to do so, or at least to go the full mile, because the project is already getting so much hate from the other side. So they might want to soften the blow, they might want to just back away entirely, who knows? But it definitely has an impact on both sides, and I think that's damaging for, like I said, media criticism. But whilst we're on the topic of review bombing, can I just say, even aside from its impact on media criticism and analysis and all of that, review bombing pisses me the hell off, because how immature, how inconsiderate, how vile, like how much hate do you have to be filled with to review bomb something just based off of the fact that there's a person of color in the cast, based off of the fact that these people are getting more opportunities celebrities to be spotlighted. Like the anger and hatred that you must feel to go out there and sometimes even create multiple accounts or have algorithms created to make accounts to just review bomb something. Like, what a disgusting, despicable thing to do. Oh, I'm sick and tired of seeing this kind of thing. Anything that disagrees with your perception of reality, which isn't even real, which is very much influenced by right-wing propaganda, you would go out there and just review bomb it. You would go out there and express that level of hatred and anger and discrimination. It makes me sick to my stomach, and it pisses me the hell off to no end. And the thing is that it's always targeted towards progressiveness. Like, it's always targeted towards the left. You don't see left-wing people review bombing Yellowstone. You don't see left-wing people review bombing, I don't know, the NFL. I don't know. I don't know what else, right-wing folks watch. But it never happens the other way around, and it just pisses me off. And also can I say, in light of the socio-political environments that we're in right now, this hot boiling point that we're in, I think studio heads and executives and creatives need to do a better job of protecting their talent. Because it's one thing to, have these projects and green light them, and you have a more multicultural cast, and it should be celebrated, but it's not, because this is the world that we live in. It's one thing to do that job, but you also need to protect your talent. You also need to push them forward and show the world that you are protecting them, that you have their back, because otherwise it feels like you're leading them like lambs to the slaughter. It's just horrible, and it happens time and time again. We saw this with Kelly Marie Tran, with Moses Ingram. Like, these studios need to do a better job of protecting their talents, because it's rough out here. It's horrible out here in these streets. But the thing is that we're never gonna go back. Like, this is progression. You can't stand in the way of progress, dummies. So we're never gonna go back. We just need to find a better way forward. And for my final point on media literacy, I just want to leave you with this thought, and that is that everything is political. Every single thing. I studied law and politics at university, and that was the first thing that we were told during our first lecture for politics. Everything is political, guys. Literally everything. And I'm not just talking about electoral politics, although that's, hot in the news right now, as many countries are going through elections. But we're talking about all different realms of politics. We're talking about racial politics, we're talking about sexual politics, we're talking about gender politics. Every single thing can be viewed from a political lens, and that includes art. That includes every single kind of movie, of TV show. Even if you think it's just a popcorn flick, even if you think it's just a rom-com or a Michael Bay, action-packed B movie, everything has politics inside. And you will see this. You will see this as soon as you start asking yourself why. Why is it that Megan Fox was depicted that way during the Transformers franchise? Why is it that a lot of these rom-coms only have white leads? Why is it that as soon as you start asking yourself these questions, as soon as you become more media literate, you realize that everything can be seen through a political lens. And so this idea that things have only just now become political is a fallacy. Anything created by humans has always been political, because they are imbued with the ideologies, with the political thoughts, with the philosophies of the human beings that are making them. The art, the music, the fashion, TV shows, films across time have all had political thoughts or angles that they've been imbued with, because they've been made by human beings and not robots. And even technology, yes, technology that is supposed to be objective, like AI, is definitely political, as we are increasingly seeing each and every day. So please erase this idea that things have only just now started to become political, because they always were. And perhaps you just didn't realize, and that's likely because it was a political ideology that you agreed with, a political ideology that was the default. And so you didn't see that it was propaganda. You didn't see that it was in fact an agenda, an angle that the establishment was taking, until the direction of that angle started to shift. And now, because of that shift, you see the politics, you see the agenda. But regardless, keep in mind, the agenda was always there. Everything was always political. It just so happens that for some art, for some music, for some films and TV shows, the dominating politics has changed. But you know what hasn't changed? The Boys. The Boys hasn't changed. The Boys hasn't changed in its 4 seasons of existence. It has always had this political angle. If anything, the real change has come from the fact that, yes, it has been far more overt in its anti-right-wing politics views, because in previous seasons there used to be a bit of a balance of, you know, making fun of both sides. I can see that shift where The Boys has really hammered home on making Homelander a pathetic weasel that he always was, but now it really kind of shines a light on that as he has ascended to power in Vought. And so perhaps for those people who are watching with blinders can no longer ignore the fact that their hero was the villain all along. So maybe that's the shift that we're seeing. But man, you really need to have not been paying a lick of attention for the last 3 seasons to truly be shocked by any of this. The true surprise comes from the fact that the series seems to have abandoned taking a more of a nuanced approach and taking a look at both sides of the socio-political spectrum to really examine how, you know, these political parties and the establishment at the top are puppeteering people with all different ideologies for power and control. And that was something that was really effectively pushed in especially season 2 of the series with the introduction of Victoria Newman, and that really made me take a look at real world politics in a different view, and people like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who are kind of rising at that time, and Victoria Newman was kind of modeled after her. It really made me change my perception of the political landscape in real life, like dead ass. It really changed my view of things, and I thought that was really effective, that was really innovative and cross-cutting. But as the seasons have gone on, they've really doubled down on focusing on Homelander and his ascent to the throne, and so we've seen less of that nuance, and I actually think that's less interesting. It's less shocking and surprising, because I knew that Homelander was the villain all along, but apparently that's news to some of y'all. Apparently some of y'all didn't realize, so I guess you can have fun with that. Now, as for season 4 of The Boys, I guess I can give you guys my 5-minute review of the show since you've already sat through my whole speech about media literacy. Thank you for that, by the way, if you're still here. But I really enjoyed season 4 of The Boys. Overall, I thought it was a solid season. The Boys rarely misses when it comes to its seasons. Like, it's always good. It's one of those shows that's like always good, but there are seasons that are better than others. I would say that season 4 falls more in line with season 2, where it felt like it was setting up a lot. We didn't really get a huge shift in everyone's positions. I mean, you have Hughie, who is still in a relationship with Annie. He's still, you know, trying to help out the boys, but you see that he has a bit more autonomy and a bit more confidence. He's trying to leverage his relationship with Victoria Newman, who I didn't realize they had such a deep relationship, to be honest. I think they conflated that a little bit for the context of season 4, but in reality they weren't that close before, so for her to trust him that much was a bit strange, but fine, we'll go along with it. Hughie is stepping in, becoming his own man at this point, and he's trying to leverage that to take her down, and of course he does suffer that horrible tragedy of the death of his father, which, you know, makes him stumble quite a bit in the middle of the season, and that was a really, really sad episode, and Simon Pegg was incredible. He gave the best performance that he ever has on this show, introducing a bit more of that background on Hughie's family and his complicated relationship with his mother who left them. It was really good character stuff. But overall, his situation hasn't changed drastically, and that's been the case for a couple of seasons now, especially since he took Compound V for himself and got powers. And then you have Annie herself, who's become a sort of left-wing figurehead, someone that a lot of people look up to, a sort of counterbalance to Homelander, and that's a big deal for a moment. But then you have the release of this really private information that she had an abortion, and that becomes sort of fuel to the fire for the left-wing commentators like Firecracker, who's out here being every single left-wing commentator on social media with a road mic. Like she represents all of them. Okay, we've all seen the ones. I've certainly seen the ones from the black community, but not the white community actually. So this was like a fun new experience for me. But she's out there representing those folks, and she comes for Annie because of their, you know, history, where Annie was a bit of a bully to her in the past, and she still has that vendetta against her. But Annie is really struggling with her identity as Starlight, because, you know, on the one hand, Starlight is something that Vought created, and it represents all things bad and evil, and so she kind of wants to strip away from that. But also, you know, who is she without that Starlight banner? What can she really do? What change can she really make without it? That's something that she's trying to figure out, especially as she has all these new eyes on her, and she's supposed to be a symbol for something bigger and better than what Vought or Homelander can offer. Now, I would say that storyline played out pretty well in the first 2/3 of the season, and then it kind of got a bit lost, especially when Annie was quite literally kidnapped, and she was swapped over for a shapeshifter who was able to take her form and fool Hughie for 10 days. 10 days. Hughie, sir, you are not serious. You are not serious. You didn't recognize that was your girlfriend for 10 days. And sure, he said that there were things that he noticed here and there, like the fact that Annie found her keys or whatever, but you didn't say anything. You didn't do anything. I genuinely thought that at the end, when Hughie and MM were like protecting the president, I thought at that point that they already knew that Annie was actually the shapeshifter. I thought that they were trying to trap her and it was a part of a plan or something. Like, I thought they had already clocked on, but Hughie literally only realized when they were in the bunker, and I was like, my guy, like, honestly, she forgave him too soon. She forgave him too soon, because that's crazy. 10 days. 10 days. You didn't even recognize that it's not her. You didn't think that she was actually a bit fishy. And also the fact that you already knew there was a shapeshifter out there, I would be suspicious immediately. I would be suspicious immediately. I'd be like, I don't trust anyone. We need a safe word or something to protect ourselves, because a shapeshifter, oh, no one can be trusted. So that was certainly a huge hit to Annie's self-esteem, but she managed to take it out on that shapeshifter splendidly, beating the hell out of her. And she also got a moment to beat the hell out of the Deep, and really she should have beat him to death. Really, she should have split him open and in half, the way that Victoria Newman got split by a butcher. But they were like, oh no, we don't know how to kill him, so let's just leave him bleeding and unconscious on the ground. I was like, whatever, you don't want him to leave the show, yeah, okay, fine. But the boys definitely would have killed the Deep right there and then, because even though he is a beloved character, it definitely would have raised the stakes and made it feel more substantial to have him just be beaten up to death by the woman that he abused. But again, like I said, even though the character of Annie is kind of moving along slowly in the right direction, there weren't any major shifts or changes with the character this season. It was kind of just like a continuation of a steady progression that we've been seeing for the last couple of seasons already. And then we move on to Butcher. And first up, I'll just say, I saw it coming. I did. I already knew. I knew that Jeffrey Dean Morgan wasn't real. Like, he is real. He is real. But on the show, okay, Butcher's buddy that he kept talking to when no one was around, yeah, I knew. And the trick is, by the way, for those of you who were genuinely surprised by that reveal, the trick is to take a look at other characters around. If the other characters are also acknowledging the presence of this character, then yeah, he's around, he's solid, he's tangible, and he's real. But if no one else interacts with that character, if no one else pays him any mind, then that's giving you an inkling that that person isn't actually there in the room with us. Okay, so yeah, I definitely wasn't surprised by the reveal that Jeffrey Dean Morgan wasn't real. They did say that, you know, Butcher had actually left him for dead, which I think is hilarious and terrifying. Like, he's such a terrible person. But he basically acts as the devil on Butcher's shoulder, kind of pushing him towards his worst instincts of trying to eradicate the whole superhero race for the sake of getting back at Homelander, to the point where he's willing to put out that virus that we saw introduced in Gen V out to the world, just so he can take down Homelander, knowing full well that it will lead to an out-and-out G-word. Now, for most of the season, you see Becca be the counterpart to Jeffrey Dean Morgan. She is his angel, trying to steer him in the right direction. She wants him to help protect Ryan, who's currently under Homelander's custody and being corrupted by the day. So she wants Butcher to lean into his better side and be the better man. But Butcher, on top of everything else, is also dying. He is dying of, you know, compound V poisoning, and so he is coughing out blood every single day, coughing his brains out. He can barely think straight, and so he is making the worst decisions possible. He's acting erratically. He's barely even connected to the boys at this point. They only bring him in when desperate times call for desperate measures, and so he's an absolute mess. But in the end, the devil wins, and he splits Victoria in half. And, you know, she was fun while she lasted. And I think it was time. I think it was time to wrap up the Victoria storyline. As much as I really enjoyed the character, you could see that they were kind of spinning their wheels a little bit with the character, because at times she would seem stronger, at times she would seem weaker. Like, they just didn't know what to do with her fully, because she clashed with their path to Homelander's ascent to the throne. And also, she was never a probable puppet for Homelander. Like, she was just too strong-willed. Like, it never would have worked. And so ultimately Butcher takes her out of the equation right in front of her daughter's eyes, which is just, I mean, yet another kid with trauma and superpowers. That's gonna end well. But that's what happens. And then you see is it the vice president or some other politician who ends up being Homelander's puppet. And so that makes way for this weak man to take the Oval Office. Meanwhile, you have Homelander's hand right on his shoulder, telling him exactly what to do. And what to do is to enact martial law. And now all of a sudden, all of the supes have unvetted power over the entire country and perhaps even the world. And this was all part of the plan. This was all part of the plan that was enacted by Sage. Because Sage is the brand new supe that's introduced in season 4, and she is the smartest person on the planet, and she's also a black woman, which annoyed many viewers. Listen, that was one of the reasons why people were like, maybe this show is woke, and like, honestly, good riddance. But yes, it was all part of Sage's plan. She was puppeteering this entire thing. For what purposes? I'm not sure. Is it because she has this big end game to take down Homelander and Vought? Is it just because she is bored and was tired of playing video games at home? Like, we don't know what her motives really are. It's very obscure in that way. But all we know is that she's super smart, and Homelander started to rely on her, and then he betrayed her, which apparently she saw coming, only for her to end up right at the finish line the way that she knew she would, and Homelander came crawling back to her. So Sage was a really interesting character and a perfect addition to the boys this season. I, of course, liked seeing a black female female soup on the show. But I wouldn't say she's the black female soup that I was hoping for. Like, she was definitely out of left field, especially because she was supporting Homelander. And we don't know what her motives are. Like I said, you know, she could be trying to take down Homelander, or she could quite literally just be bored and she wanted to play with power. Like, we don't know. We literally do not know. It does definitely tick me off that she was supporting a fascist. Like, like, it's kind of crazy. But again, that speaks to how the show has always kind of dilly-dallied on both sides of the political spectrum, which some people don't seem to appreciate. But ultimately, when it comes to the character of Sage, I like the fact that she is a complex black female character. I like the fact that even though she does make some points, some good points about, you know, women in power, the struggle to be taken seriously, to be listened to when you're a woman, especially a woman of color, and she bonds with Victoria Newman on that front. But at the same time, her actions seem to defy what, you know, she thinks and how she feels when she's having these conversations with Victoria and A-Train. You know, why are you on the side of Homelander then? Like, why are you siding with the bad guy? I like the fact that she kind of dances on both sides and seems to have her own motives, even though we're not privy to them. What I don't love about the character though, what I don't love about the character is the fact that it's one of those, oh, it was all part of my plan all along. Like, this was all part of my plan. That kind of annoys me. I don't think I'm fully convinced by that. I would need to see her rationale. I would need to see her working out. And you know, when you're in an exam and you get the right answer with like the wrong working out, yeah, I would need to see a breakdown of her chain of reasoning for me to truly believe that she intended for this outcome to occur. Because otherwise, it's just all talk to me. Otherwise, it's just all talk. And I don't think that the writers are really going to painstakingly go through what Sage's plan was in season 5. Maybe they will. Maybe we'll be surprised. But I think it speaks to a lack of strong writing to really take the audience on the journey of how Sage's plan came together, to really convince us that she really was in control all along. Because otherwise, it's just all talk and no proof. And that's the challenge with writing characters who are supposed to be the smartest in the world or whatever, is that sometimes their genius can come across as convenience and plot armor. Now, there's plenty of characters that we can dive into. I mean, we had A-Train, and he was working with the boys this season. He was the leak before he headed on off to Cyprus or somewhere, running away from Homelander, although he probably won't get very far. And, you know, Ashley was his accomplice, and she failed to go with him when she had the chance. Okay, she decided to stick around for some dumb reason because she's addicted to the power or whatever. So in the end, her only option was to take some compound V and, like, fingers crossed, hope for the best. Fingers crossed, hope for the best. I wonder what her powers are going to be in season 5. It's probably going to be grotesque and disgusting and horrifying knowing this show. And then, of course, you had the Deep, who's out here doing the deep things. He was in a relationship with Octopus Tilda Swinton. Like, honestly, it wasn't even the worst that we've seen from him. It was pretty tame this season. It had a bit more of an emotional angle though, which was fun. But yeah, and also the fact that the Octopus was voiced by Tilda Swinton was crazy. But yeah, the Deep just be doing the deep stuff, and he's of course hanging out with Noir, who in world has been replaced, but in the real world was always portrayed by the same actor, who apparently in real life is also narcoleptic. So like, that's a fun little twist there. But yeah, new Noir doesn't have the same flair for violence and killing that old Noir had. And by the way, I still miss old Noir. He was a hell of a character, very complicated and wild, but a great character. And it's a shame that they killed him. And again, it's a bit cowardly of them not to kill the Deep this season. But anywho, so there's a fun little buddy cop dynamic there where these guys are terrorizing anyone who could have intel on Homelander and his crazy ascent to power at Vought, and they're just going around killing everyone left, right and center. So yeah, we could get into all of that good stuff, that's fine. But in reality, the focus is of course on Homelander. It's become clear over the last few seasons that Homelander is truly the star of the show. Like, he is the big draw, and this season we see that he is seated on the throne at Vought, and he is trying to clamor on to more power. He's asserting soup dominance soups. You know, that's his version of white supremacy, is like soup supremacy. He does, of course, also represent white supremacy at the same time. Don't get it twisted. But in world, his specific ideology is soup supremacy, and he looks down on human beings, and he's trying to share those thoughts and ideologies with his son Ryan, who he's trying to parent. He's trying to parent Ryan in his weird, twisted way, and underlying all of this is still this need to be loved and to be, you know, appreciated and held tight by mummy, a mummy that he never had. And so this season we even see him return to the lab that made him and kill everyone involved. I mean, it was just a wild, crazy scene. But in reality, that didn't cure him of his need to be loved and to have approval. And so in comes Firecracker to take advantage of that very trait. And she decides to take some life-threatening medication that allows you to lactate even when you are not with child, all for the small price of enlarging the size of your heart, okay? Just so she could get into Homelander's good books. And that's not even consistently successful. That's not even something that works, because as she dies from this horrible medication, he backs away from her entirely. And you do, of course, have that scene in the finale that is absolutely hilarious and extremely satisfying, where he tells her to move several seats across because he doesn't want to catch whatever she has. So yeah, in season 4 we don't really see any major shifts in Homelander's station or situation. The boys are mostly focused on Victoria Newman, so he doesn't really come into contact with them any time throughout the season. And he's on top of Vought now, so he's mostly focused on trying to assert his authority and convince everyone in the world that he is in fact the smartest man and best man for the job. But in reality, he was created in a lab to be a star, to be, you know, a celebrity, a spokesperson for all of the horrible things that Vought stands for. And so he doesn't actually have the acumen, business or otherwise, to really lead this company and stage this coup that he has in mind. And so that's where Sage comes in. And so he's making these political moves with the help of Sage, but you see time and time again that without her, he is just completely lost and dumbfounded because he doesn't actually have that knowledge. And then of course you see Homelander, the father, Daddy Homelander. Oh, that sounds weird. Daddy Homelander. He's trying to be the parent that he never had. He's trying his best, you know, or like he's just a single father. Ooh, he's just a single father trying his best. Yeah, he's a messed up father. He is a messed up dad, psychopathic, sociopathic, all of the pathics. Okay, Homelander is just the worst. And unfortunately, he has already infected Ryan with his ways of thinking, because in the end, you see Ryan killing Mallory, killing her, and he's just turned to the bad side. He returns home to Homelander, and it's just horrifying to see. But other than that, Homelander doesn't go through any major changes. I mean, it sounds like he did, but in reality, the season was pretty slow and mostly setting up for what's to come in season 5. And finally, in light of the mid-credit scene at the end of the season finale, I would say that season 4 was definitely missing a bombastic character, like a VIP character in the way that we got in season 3 with Jensen Ackles' Soldier Boy. And so it makes complete sense that he's back. He's back again, as we saw at the end of the finale. But I think it's a shame that they weren't able to recreate that magic with Jeffrey Dean Morgan this season, because many people were really excited to see him on the show, but it just wasn't the same. Like I said, I saw that twist coming from a mile away, and he just didn't have that same impact as Soldier Boy had. So very excited to see Soldier Boy return, and excited to see what becomes of the world of the boys now that the Supes are officially in charge. So that's it from me, guys. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on review bombing and the death of media literacy, as well as sprinkling in a review of The Boys season 4, it's time for you guys to let me know what you think of all of this down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.